Namaste, my dear friends. In this video, I am going to explain and describe Bhakti ideals, the Nirguna movement, and rise of Sikhism in India. At a time when North India had immersed itself into the fathomless waters of practicing orthodox evils in the likes of the obdurate fourfold societal divisions. In this context, the division is based on birth. Originally, however, social division was occupation based in nature into the Varnasrams. Rig Veda Hyman 10.90 polytheism, untouchability, Chandals and Domes who were ostracized as outcasts and bowing down to the unassailable supremacy of the Brahmins, priestly class who effectuated the sacred rituals as stated in the scriptures in order to help a devotee attain salvation, moksha or mukti, the ultimate goals of life. A more just and humane approach towards divine dharma and the ideal human karma came from far-flung south. What is known to us as the Bhakti movement today was actually a series of reformative in the sense that the Varna system in every way was rejected, polytheism opposed, and so very authoritative rituals were questioned. Doctrines inside Hinduism as had been propagated by the medieval Indian saints, especially poet seers that came from the south. The earliest examples of them being the Seva Nayanars and their contemporary the Vaishnava Alvars. Their message was simple and effortlessly construable. Salvation is a path that all men, irrespective of what societal background he may belong to, can stride on solely through love and faithful devotion. Bhakti to their movements were at times divided with regard to the Hindu Sampradaya sect they would follow. Venerate Almighty, Vaishnavism, Saivism, Smartism, and Shaktiism had all except for Srotism that followed the teachings of the Purva Mimamsa ideology came under the Bhakti influence. As a consequence, scholars Karen Skomer and W.S. MacLeod in their work entitled The Sons Studied in a Devotional Tradition of India have come to observe that salvation, once considered unattainable except by men of the three upper castes, came to be seen as the prerogative of all, and spiritual leadership shifted from the Brahman priest knowledgeable about ritual and Sanskrit scripture to the figure of the popular poet saint who composed fervent songs of devotion in the regional vernacular. The consequent impact of this movement on the society was threefold. The consequent impact of this movement on the society was threefold. A socio-religious, in the sense that the societal division, often taken to be one of the greatest legacies of the Vedic age, was forsworn, and Hinduism after the Reformation became acceptable to the people anew, leading to the gradual decline of Buddhism, Jainism, and the other Shramana schools in the Indian landmass. Politico-administrative and sudden outpour of a lot of Hindu religious works and the popularization of the vernacular languages in which they were usually composed. The Bhakti movement was diverse and although regionalized in nature, widespread. Its root stemmed out of the peninsular plateau in around the 7th century AD, and within another 4 centuries the branches of the ever expanding tree had resolutely extended to and established their ideals in the likeness of parasouls over the central, northern, and eastern India populace. Jainism continued to be preached as it is preached even today in the western Indian kingdom, for their patronage was extended mostly by the detested mercantile class. Even then, Bhakti poets saints like Mirabai, Rajab, Charandas, and the Dadu Panthis were not a very uncommon sight. The word Bhakti has its origin in the Saveta Upanishad Hyman 6.6023, which, as translated by Paul Deussen in his 60 Upanishads of the Veda, Volume 1, reads, "He who highest bhakti, love devotion of Deva God, just like his Deva, so for his Guru teacher to him who is high-minded, these teachings will be illuminating." Every Guru that so came into being had his own path to moksha. As they gradually merged with their gospels in hundreds and thousands, the basic framework of Hinduism as people knew it until then was altered. If a closer look is taken at the divisions of the Hindu sampradayas that now exist, it would be amusing to observe how each of them rever, taking the non-Puranic Shaivite philosophy as an example, the Shiva as the common lord of the universe, notwithstanding which the how to worship Shiva is so varied and so discreet. For an illustration, while the Nathapanthis, who adhered themselves to the teachings of Gorakhnath and Matsyendranath, revered the sattva, goodness qualities of Shiva, and Kapalikas and Aghoris worshipped Lord Bhairava, a tamasic incarnation of the Shiva, yet their destinations remained the same. The ultimate goal of life and that of their teachings being the attainment of moksha or salvation through paths that differed not only in terms of the how to worship but also which incarnation to worship. The same holds true for the Vaishnavite sects as well, though it is to be noted that most and not all of these sects, however subsistent they might be in both Shaivism and Vaishnavism, trace their origin to the Bhakti time. The two broader and more popular dimensions of the Bhakti movement that encompass most of the above talked about regionalized movements under their parasols include the Nirguna Bhakti and the Shaguna Bhakti. In his work Talks on the Gita, eminent philosopher and man behind the Bhudan movement, Acharya Vinoba Bhave notes that the discussion of bhakti is going to be completed in the 12th chapter. Arjuna has asked a question here which is similar to what he had asked in the 5th chapter. When the exposition of the science of life was concluded, he asked, some devotees worship you in Saguna form while others worship you in Nirguna form. Whom do you like more? Nirguna and Saguna, hence, as can be inferred from the aforesaid interpretation of verses in the Bhagavad Gita, he said, to in generalized words represent the forms in which a devotee worships the Almighty. A more contextual explanation for the same has been provided by Bhave himself in the following paragraphs, where he states that it is just like asking a mother having two sons, whom do you love more? The younger son is a little child deeply attached to his mother. He is happy only in her company and is restive if she is out of the sight even for a moment. He cannot bear separation from her even for a moment. Without her, the world is like a big void for him. The elder son too is full of love for the mother, but he is grown up and mature. He can stay away from her. He serves her and takes all the burden and responsibility upon himself. Being absorbed in the work, he can endure separation from her. He is admired by the world and his reputation pleases his mother. If You tell this mother that she can have only one of these two sons and she will have to choose between them. What could she do? How can she make a choice? Try to understand her plight. She will be totally nonplussed and may mumble, I can bear separation from the elder one if I cannot help it. It is more difficult for her to tear away the younger son from her bosom. His special attachment to her will weigh with her and she may reply accordingly. But it cannot be said to be the real answer to the question as to which of the two sons is dear to her. She will reply if she must, but it would not be proper to take her words literally. The question of choice between Saguna and Nirguna is similar. The Saguna devotee serves the Lord through his organs, whereas the Nirguna devotee thinks of the good of the whole world. These two types of devotees may appear outwardly different, but they are intrinsically intrinsically one and the same. Both of them are dear to the Lord. Bharat, Ram's brother, is an example of Nirguna devotee, and the Lakshmana, another brother, is an example of a Saguna devotee. Sikhism, a way of life founded sometimes in and around 1500 AD by Guru Nanak Dev, a spiritual preacher originally associated with the Nirguna Bhakti movement, discarded as observed by Eleanor Nesbit in her work Sikhism, a very short introduction. The Saguna theory and Avatara, and instead stressed on the formlessness of God and his universal existence, as was propounded by the 13th century Vaishnavite poet Saint Namadev, along not for a kingdom or for mukti but only for the lotus feet of the Lord. A statement from the Holy Guru Granth Sahib makes it more manifested. The Sikh Encyclopedia tries to shed some light on the underlying features of Sikhism that seem similar to the Bhakti cult and the major differences, if any, between the two. For the Bhakti cults, Bhakti is the be all and all of everything. For Sikhism, two other crucially important ends are ethical living and spiritual liberation. The cultivation of moral qualities in Sikhism is the requisite condition for Bhakti. Without morality, Bhakti is not practicable, is what the Guru Granth Sahib states on the same. That the Bhakti movement has had no effect, whether it be implicit or explicit, on Sikhism would be factually incorrect to state. For major Sikh tenets like formlessness of God, universality, openness to willing followers without discrimination, and the blatant rejection of the Saguna concept of Avatara and personification have been primarily drawn from the Nirguna Bhakti movement, of which Guru Nanak Dev himself was an important part. For instance, in the Guru Granth Sahib itself, beside the writing of the six Sikh Guru Nanak Dev, Guru Amar Das, Guru Angad, Guru Arjan Dev, Guru Ram Das and Guru Tegh Bahadur, there is a separate section, Bani Bhagtan Ki, devoted entirely to the teachings of 15 important Bhakti saints, some prominent names amongst them being Kabir, Namdev, Surdas, Ramanand and Jaydev. However, beside the aforesaid six tenets, there does exist a specific Nanakpanthi philosophy first propagated by Guru Nanak Dev, ideology that includes the practice of fearlessness, the 5 Ks, uncut hair, kangha, a wooden comb, kada, an iron bracelet, kachera, cotton underpants, and kirpan, an iron dagger. The practice of not living on alms but on what a Sikh would earn from his own labor, kirtan, and the selective acceptance of bhajans and kirtan, while rejecting the rigid bhakti practices of tantras. sacrifices and upasanas, thus forming a very valid reason as to why Sikhism cannot simply be taken to have emanated out of, without change or modification, the bhakti principle. How Sikhism came into being is actually a process that can be, in the generalized terminology, called evolution, amalgamating some of the widely practiced Nirguna Bhakti ideologies with and incorporating in them additional, somewhat based on the socio-political ambience of their times, helping followers of the faith to choose a life of dharmic practicality and not one that would simply encompass the dimensions of devotional mysticism and spirituality. Note: in this article, using caste in order to replace varna, although the aforesaid use has been generalized by most scholars and academics now. Caste, when seen in the Hindu standards, transliterates to jati, a concept that is entirely different to and at times a subsidiary of the varnasrama. For instance, among Brahmins, which is a varna, Kulina Brahman is a jati or a caste. Hence, it is to be kept in mind that every varna has a separate hierarchy of jatis and that not all castes under the Brahmana varna enjoyed equal dominance in society. Saudra Daya Be is a... So, this is a very good article. So, dear friend, thank you for watching and listening this video. Please like, comment and share the video and subscribe the channel. Thank you. Namaste.